I just felt, out of sensitivity to our larger world, that I wanted to invite us all, before we start this happy event, to share in just one moment of silence, sending our wishes for peace to our friends and all the people, both Israelis and Palestinians, that are in trauma and pain right now. Thank you. I'm not sure that art can change the world, but it sure helps. We're really glad to have some wonderful people here with us this evening. And before we introduce them, we want to tell you a little bit of sneak preview of a couple things that are happening very soon with Theater Lovers Club. Our November event is going to be rather unique. And how many of you have seen our new theater company, the Exodus Ensemble? Oh, quite a few. On November, we're going to be doing a Steps Out to Exodus. It's a new group, one of the newest groups in Santa Fe. During COVID, when a lot of actors, theaters were closed and they're out of work, a graduate of our own St. John's said, let's gather some of these bright, young, talented people together, and with her background in the great books from St. John's, co-create new visions of classic works. Chekhov, the Bible, Euripides. And so we're going to be seeing Jason by Euripides recreated by some of these amazing young people with lots of technology, and we all get to be, to the extent we want to be, sort of a Greek chorus. Wine will be served. It's halfway between a party and theater.
Is that the
And it's
immersive theater group?
It's the immersive theater group. Yeah, they're also the ones that do the thing on Martin's, the art train. And they now have a permanent home at CCA, at the Center for Contemporary Arts, in the, what was, the art studio part. And so, I want you to notice, tickets are free, but you have to reserve a seat because only so many people can go. So go online to our Theater Lovers Club under Theater Santa Fe, reserve your free ticket. You do have a chance to contribute to them once you're there, but don't wait, because there's a limit to how many people can go. It is November 29th, and they will join us for a talk back afterwards with more wine. So that's November. And then, way ahead, Leslie called me this afternoon to remind me to let you know we're focusing on playwrights. Theater couldn't exist without the people that write theater pieces. And we got such good feedback for the party we had in September. We had Readers Theater for some of the upcoming productions, that we decided to do a similar thing, not quite so big scale, but just to focus on readings, February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, as a special Valentine's gift to playwrights. We're going to have a special event that'll just be, we'll divide into small groups and do readings of new works by local playwrights. Two of the playwrights that were at our party in September said, getting people to read the play and seeing it and being able to interact and give feedback really helped us in the writing process. So if you're a writer, if you have a piece in process, if you have friends, pass the word. February 13th, we'll have a special event at Theater Santa Fe where we will read new works by new Santa Fe playwrights. So mark those dates on your calendar. Now, Rosemary is in charge of this evening. Most of you probably, I hope none of you missed the successful run of City Mice, which was fabulous. She has produced plays all over the world, not all over the world, but different places in the country and abroad.
There's a few countries. Namibia comes to mind.
Oh, yeah, she hasn't quite been all yet. But we're really glad to have her as one of our local playwrights, and she has brought three other playwrights.
Could you face us when you...
Oh, sorry. And she has brought three other people together to answer the question, why write plays? Thank you, Rosemary, and the rest of her. She will introduce the others.
So Marlene, I see you up there, and you've got your deadline for writing a 10-minute show for the February 23rd. There's probably some other playwrights in the audience, but I know Marlene always needs a deadline. And I really am pleased to do this. This is the second time that I've had the opportunity to lead a panel of playwrights. And although I think we have completely new people, which just goes to show you that there's a big turnover in the playwright community. But the fact is that playwrights don't really get a chance to talk to one another that much. And so I know last time it was fascinating to me to listen to my fellow playwrights and hear hear them respond to some of the questions that we had. So I'll have a few questions to ask. And then I know that there's some playwrights out there in the audience, and I think that it would be great for everybody to be able to ask some. And Vicki wrote me back. This is Vicki Meagher. She wrote me back and said, it wasn't why write plays, but why keep writing plays. And that has more to do with the, I called up one, or I emailed one very established playwright in Santa Fe, and he said that, well, he wasn't going to come because it was just so difficult to get local productions and stuff. And I said, well, that's a fact, but you know, we have to do what we do. Well, some of us feels like we have to do what we do. Anyway, I thought that everyone could introduce themselves based on these two questions. One is, how do you get to the local area? How did you get to northern New Mexico? Because we have Vicki's from Albuquerque and Robert is from Los Alamos, and I guess we two are from Santa Fe, right?
Yes.
And he came the furthest though, so you can start.
Okay.
This is Daniel Husson, and he came from?
The story starts in New York City. So I lived in New York for about 13 years, and through a long circuitous route, finally got my undergraduate degree from the New School in writing, really great program there, and wanted to do grad school. Ended up going to grad school in Glasgow, Scotland. So I lived there for 2.5 years. And then me and my wife, our visa ran out in March of 2020, really great timing. So we stayed in upstate New York with a friend who had a like half-finished garage apartment up in the Hudson Valley, which was lovely to have all this acreage to walk around when everybody I knew was stuck in their New York apartments. And then winter was coming and we had no insulation, and we're like, hey, we visited Santa Fe once. Let's see if there's any apartments available that take cats, because in the meantime my wife had trapped 2 cats in a barn, very cute. So we, sight unseen, got an apartment here, bought a Subaru, and drove here.
Wow.
So it's gonna be 3 years at the end of the month. So that's how I got here.
Okay, great. And you want to say how you got to playwriting?
I was an actor first. I think my very first role was a non-speaking part in this play called The Great Cross Country Race, which is a retelling of The Hare and the Tortoise. And I've always been interested in storytelling, and I just love the shared experience. I go to a lot of live music too, and I just love the shared live experience of dealing with art. And yeah, so my grad school was in writing. So that's, I think, when I really went back to school, to New School, is when I started taking writing seriously. And now I just don't know what else I would do.
So Vicki, do you want to answer that question? Vicki is the newest playwright, I think, on this panel. She's having her very first full-length production, and it opens this weekend, and it's going to run for 3 weekends, and I know what a tremendous excitement that is, and a tremendous so Vicki, why don't you tell us how you got to northern New Mexico, and also how you got to playwriting in either order.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Tennessee.
Oh yeah, we're
Rosemary.
We're both related to Tennessee Williams. Not really.
By a geograph.
Figuratively speaking.
So I was living in the greater Boston area in New Hampshire, and I was ushering for plays all the time, a volunteer usher in the Boston area, and I would drive down to Boston for over an hour. People say to me, "You drove all the way from Albuquerque?" And I think, "Well, it's easier than driving to Boston." So I would see 4 or 5 plays a month and just really liked it. And I was I'd been writing short stories and I'd written screenplays, and all of a sudden I decided, why don't I just write plays? It was like, I always liked theater. When I thought about it, I didn't have it in the world south, but I thought, why don't I write plays? So I just kept working as a technical writer software for 30 years. I worked as a software tech writer and saved my money so that I could quit working for money and not have to worry about money. So 2013, that's what I did, and the next day I started writing my 2 plays I had been thinking about for a long time. So it was harder and didn't pay any money, and but I knew that would be happening. I mean, I wasn't surprised. So, and I just kept doing it. So now I've written 12 full-length plays, and I keep doing it because I express as I get older, I have different things to express, and I enjoy writing more difficult plays, and there's some satisfaction in the intellectual, just to engaging your mind. So I do that, and how I got here is, my partner John and I were traveling across country. He lived in Albuquerque, and I was living in New England, and I started coming out here and thinking, getting involved in the theater community just briefly. I had a play in the 2019 Benchwarmers, Santa Fe Benchwarmers, and that's where I met Robert, the first playwright I ever met in Mexico. And so I just decided to move here, and then the pandemic happened, and so I didn't get here full time until August 2021, so I've been living here for 2 years now. And I found that the Santa Fe theater community has been very welcoming to me. Albuquerque is a bunch of silos, really. They're just blocks of people who know each other, but they're not nearly as cohesive. It's a bigger city as Santa Fe, so I've had fun coming up here and meeting people, and I hope you'll all come to see my play. There are cards out here. Is it here? Yeah.
This is
It's here.
Yeah, this is the stage in the making, yeah? It opens Friday. Yep. So, okay.
Well, I'll introduce myself. I actually started as an actress too. I was a child actress in Nashville. She was in Columbus, which is about an hour south.
Now, Pulaski,
Pulaski,
an
sorry.
hour and a half.
Anyway, Nashville had a great children's theater, really awesome. I had a great director, and but then I thought I knew everything by the time I was 15, so I didn't do anything for like the next 3 or 4 decades, and did become a writer, and then slowly I kind of moved back into writing for theater, because to me theater is the most human of all of the art forms. There's nothing between you and the audience. I mean, we have nothing but language and emotions, and it's people ask me what's the difference, because I do write novels as well for young people, and the difference is that it's completely compressed, both in time and space. The theater is. I mean, you basically, most plays take place either a few hours or a few days. You know, for them to take longer than that is rare. And they obviously take place in one scene, or maybe 3 or 4 scenes, but very much compressed. And as a result, you have the collision of human emotions, which is so vital to any work of art. But in a novel, you can go all over the place. You still need to have that ultimate confrontation and cathartic movement, but you can do it over weeks or months or all over the world or all through time and space. Whereas in theater, it's right here on the stage with people. So that's what attracted me to it. And I got here because my husband had got a job offer at the National Park Service, and so it took us about 30 seconds to make a decision to do that. Robert, you want to take over?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Robert Benjamin. I recognize a few faces here. It's good to see old friends. So I moved to northern New Mexico half a century ago, which sounds like a long time. My wife got a job as a teacher, and to get her hired, they hired me at the laboratory so that they could hire her. And so I had a career there in physics, but my interest in playwriting began 11 years earlier in high school. I had a high school English teacher in 11th grade named Mr. Bill Tunis. I don't know if any of you know him. Young guy from Harvard, was just starting out his career, and he would come in and teach Shakespeare in costume. And it was just
Where
so...
was this, Robert?
Pardon?
Where was this?
Silver Spring, Maryland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was just so exciting. I mean, he just made it fun and compelling. Do we have any high school teachers here? Retired? No? Yes? Very nice. Thank you. So I owe my start to this high school teacher who just introduced me and others to what theater's excitement is, to what it means, to how people come alive, how the characters come alive, how it relates to high school students, of all things. So that kind of got me started, although I had no idea at the time. I should mention another one of his students in the same class I was is also a playwright, more successful than myself. She's up in Salt Lake City. So then I had a career here at the laboratory in physics, and the glib answer to the question, how did I get in playwriting, is I was reading through a book of careers, and after physics comes playwriting.
That's funny.
So as I saw my career ending, and I tried to end it when it was still up there, I actually took an early retirement from the laboratory in order to devote my time to playwriting. So that's how I came to playwriting. And I agree with the comment that was made about how welcoming Santa Fe is to young playwrights, old people but young playwrights. Especially Argos, who is with us tonight. He's been instrumental in my ability to get plays up on the stage here, and I do appreciate that.
Well, that's such a great positive thing about the Santa Fe theater community, really, because I would have thought that Albuquerque, because they have so many more theaters, that would be a much greater opportunity. But have you had a show in Albuquerque already?
Yes, I have
Yeah,
several.
I have had one too, but it's hard to get a show in Albuquerque.
Yes.
I mean, I direct as well, and I tried to pitch some stuff to a few of the theaters down there, and they were just kind of
I know.
like, you know. So,
I know.
It's a director's town, as they say,
Exactly.
but they have their core directors that they use, so it's hard, it's probably hard for directors from out of town to break in there, I would say.
No, you definitely need to have a friend who's a director, for sure. This is just some of the behind the scenes
Who's a
stuff that
favorite
goes
director?
on.
Who's a
Huh?
favorite? Who's a
Right.
favorite director? And not just a director.
Yeah, I had the only play that I got done there actually had been part of the Long Island New Play Festival. I think it had been a finalist for that, and they had a stage reading for that. And the person who ran that had a friend in Albuquerque. So she called her friend in Albuquerque, and her friend got a playwright, and I got a show in Albuquerque. Otherwise, it went, so I went through Long Beach. Anyway, so it is, I think, may as well get to the nitty gritty. It's not hard, it's not so hard to write play. Well, I mean, that has challenges for sure, but it's getting plays produced, I think, which is the real bugaboo. I don't know how other people feel about that. You've had some innovative ways.
I do. So when the pandemic started, I'd been doing so much directing and stuff in Glasgow, because the Central Belt of Scotland is just like one of the most vibrant theater scenes I've ever been involved in.
The what?
The Central Belt of Scotland is between like Edinburgh and Glasgow. kind of.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had a lot of connections there, and kind of the pandemic, all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm not doing anything creative, what do I do? So I did a few Zoom plays, which are kind of interesting, but they all kind of end up looking the same, which wasn't, it stopped being interesting for me, I guess. And so now I do a lot of radio plays. So I produce them like radio plays and distribute them like podcasts. So you can find, plug for my on and off theater workshop company. You can find all of that on Spotify, Apple, etc. And it allows me to connect with old friends in New York, in Glasgow, in London, and record these fantastic actors I know all over the world. And we've done adaptations of King Lear, we've done Chekhov stuff, we've done some of my own weird plays. We're doing a whole series of history, monologues from Shakespeare's histories coming up fairly soon. There's a shorts festival about to be premiering on Thursday night, actually.
Well, that is really exciting, I have to say. I wish I was younger because it takes a certain amount of energy, not to mention kind of an intellectual jump to move into media and different media and
Well, writing for
podcasts.
sound only is so different
Right.
because you can't, there's not the visual. It is a visual medium because you're seeing it, but it's not,
Right.
you're not in the room, so how do you create that tension, that emotion
Yeah,
with voice and sound
exactly.
effects only?
Exactly. I wonder if the audience has any ideas about that. Do you think that what he's describing, the experience, is the same or similar as to what you get when you come into a theater? Yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Well, the Playhouse during the pandemic put on a couple of radio plays, which I thought was very inventive. It worked because with Zoom, you are so limited physically. Also, the sound on Zoom is just tinny.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. It's not terrific sound. But you get to use, radio for decades in the 30s was the medium, and you get to use your imagination, which is so much fun. If you've got a sense of some sound effects, which is great, but you imagine what these people look like.
Yeah, I heard one of those radio plays, and it wasn't fun. It was a really serious play, but it was excellent. In terms of its dramatic qualities, it was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
We also did one Zoom play, and it was a spoof of one of my, it's just a one act, one play, and that came off really well because it you didn't have to take it seriously. You didn't have to worry about the sound quality.
I'm going to politely demur because I heard those plays as well and realized you need to cast and direct in a different way.
Yes,
Absolutely.
big time.
Because one of the actors on whatever play I was listening to clearly didn't get what the task was all about. So I'd like to ask, how do you cast and direct and all do that radio play?
So-
I grew up on radio.
It's such a different, so like when you're in a space like this, you're supposed to project, right? That doesn't work with the technology, the microphones. If you project into the microphone, you blow out the speakers, It's also an interesting challenge to direct when you're not in the room with people. So when I used to direct in person, I would be in the space and I was very physical. And so it made my language about what I wanted more specific, I think. The casting, luckily I have...
Did you just say, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so it made my language about what I wanted more specific instead of
In
moving
on
around.
stage
No. When I'm directing for radio.
Oh,
Because and it's just, I think maybe it's just the evolution of how I direct as well, but part of it was because I was directing not in the same room with people. Casting, I've been lucky because I know a lot of great actors that have voice experience, so most of the time I'm calling someone up for anybody. But it's also really exciting for the actors to be able to say, hey, look, I'm on Spotify doing King Lear, you know? But it is a very different challenge. I don't know if I've answered your question exactly, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in a good word for Zoom plays.
One good word, right?
Pardon?
One good word, one good word.
Yeah, Zoom plays for me was just wonderful as a writer, because I started writing a play about the pandemic intended for stage, and then once it was clear that there was no stage for a while, I figured, okay, the stage is Zoom, so I adapted the play to Zoom, and the play Hunker Down, that some of you may have seen, the play takes place on Zoom, and you watch it on Zoom. So you're watching it in the real medium where the characters are interacting on Zoom calls, and it works beautifully.
I think that's an important thing, though. That's the way Zoom plays work. I think if you try to make it, there has to be a reason this call is happening.
Yeah.
You know, so there are only so many reasons that call can happen.
Right, but,
you know, but right.
COVID's a good one.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I did a few shorts, and that was the thing. I wanted it. We had to be aware that Zoom was the medium that it was happening on.
Yeah.
We couldn't pretend Zoom wasn't a thing. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree, and so that Zoom play worked great. It's still happening on Zoom, and hopefully it will be on stage as well. If anyone goes to the conference next month, the Conference on Aging in Albuquerque, I believe Hunker Down will be there. It'll be a recording from the Zoom presentation by a theater company that only does Zooms, called Play Zoomers. Great theater company. They only do Zoom plays, and so that was one of them that they did. And it's being marketed out to other places like senior venues to make it available that way.
So were they actually, the actors interacting outside of those Zoom boxes, or they were just in their own Zoom box the whole time?
They were in their own Zoom box. One actor was in Chicago, one was in Albuquerque. So they were in Zoom the whole time. Is that what you mean?
I think that quality of it, because the play that I did, The Spook, Baby Ink, it was so exciting to have actors who were from all over. That's one thing that's really exciting. And then number two, to be able to have an audience. It was the only time I have ever had an audience where my relatives in Tennessee could watch the same thing that somebody was watching in Seattle. It was that was very exciting.
Did you have something else? Did you want to follow up on
Oh, I
that?
was just thinking, I have a children's theater company, and we actually did live stream our performance, but we only have a one kind of two-person performance, and it actually was amazing. Like, I was amazed that it worked so well, because the performer's actually talking directly to the audience. It's not, so the audience was much closer in some ways than it would have been if she was live in person. And then we had like a DJ who was able to spotlight kids answering questions and stuff. So in some ways I was really shocked that it was so well received at schools.
I bet, because they're more used to that medium. And the truth is that, as you see, we don't get as many young people into the theater as we would like, whereas they are watching your screens. So I think to be able to move theater elsewhere. Did you say you're a children's theater? You have a
I have a
children's
children's
theater?
theater called Food Play Productions, and
Food play?
Food Play, it's actually we do nutrition theater shows around the country.
Oh.
But the funny thing is now that, the COVID whole thing, no one wants it anymore, they want it in person.
Right.
They absolutely do not want any screen there, the school at least.
And you're here in Santa Fe?
Yes.
Because I have some children's theater things. I'd love to pass by you. Okay.
As an audience person, one of the things that I experienced during COVID was the absolute power of creativity of the creative community. I mean, despite all of the disaster and all of the things that weren't there, all of the different ways that you as writers and actors and theater companies experimented and tried new things. And I just stood in awe. Some of them I liked I watched, subscribed to the Irish Theater Company in New York, a whole season on
really
Zoom.
good stuff.
I mean, a whole variety of ways of working within the media, and I'm seeing a lot of those things. I'm looking at some of the things that Exodus is bringing into live theater, that is stuff that comes from media and from things that Zoom plays made us do. And so I think when we say why write, it seems to me that you who are creative people write because you have to write. It's who you are. And if you don't have a stage, if you only have Zoom, you'll use Zoom. But your creativity just is going to come out. And I stand in awe of that.
Here, here. Yeah, bravo.
I think it's the way I interact with the world, like writing and making theater. It's just kind of how I think, I'm going to butcher this quote, but Joan Didion said something like, I write to figure out what I think about stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the reason why I write. Or I'm trying to illuminate a specific thing where I'm just struggling with, like I've been writing a lot of climate change stuff lately because I'm just like struggling with climate change and how we're reacting to it and what will it look like when it finally really is bad.
You know, I've used writing for psychotherapy. I didn't know that at the time, but then after I wrote a play, I realized why I wrote it, and it's helped me. And I think writing plays has made me a better person. I mean, I don't think that as I got older, I'd become a better person if I didn't write plays.
Well, I think that if you have because I didn't start really writing plays until I was like 45 or 50. And when I was not writing plays, I was a much less happy person. Or not just writing plays, but writing anything. I mean, I did write magazine and newspaper articles, but it's really not the same thing.
Yeah,
I mean, actually, feature writing is what made me believe that I could write stories, because I thought these stories, how do you get at the essence of these stories? How do you really, I have in one of my plays, I have a children's play actually, I have What is Truer Than True. I really feel like you distill what's in the common experience to find what is kind of the overriding themes. And I think the pursuit of that is what is so attractive. And when you do hit upon those amazing scenes or those amazing dialogue that conveys that, it's such an extraordinarily satisfying feeling. And I've also been in that situation of understanding what was the personal issue I was resolving through the play, but I didn't realize it while I was doing it. I actually didn't realize it until later. Yeah.
Vicki, earlier you mentioned that you're starting to write plays that are more difficult to write, and I was wondering what makes a play more difficult to write?
Having more complex characters and writing plays that are not crowd pleasers, that's a more difficult play. I mean, writing a play that explores more difficult topics. I'm working on a play right now about a person who lost her religion for a good reason, and she tries to get it back. And I kind of lost my mojo on this play because I didn't believe that she was ever going to get it back. So I kind of quit working on it for several months. And the Playwright Circle people in Albuquerque heard part of it recently, and some of them said, "Oh, well, Robert was one of them." I mean, and said, "Well, keep working on it." And I, well, okay. and I did. I went on a road trip recently, and the solution to the play came to me. So I know how I'm going to finish the play. The play was already finished. It's just that it wasn't very good, and I had to work on it a lot more. But that's an example, and it's still kind of a complex play, and it still may never be what I want it to be. But that's an example, and character changes that make them believable. That's hard, and having dialogue that doesn't bore people and just keep spinning around, saying the same thing all the time. all those things are more difficult to do.
Did you feel a compulsion to have her get her religion in the end?
Yes,
I
because
know.
I lost my religion in the pandemic, and it hasn't come back.
Right.
So,
So,
that's
yeah,
what I was wondering about.
this last play that I had here, City Mice, which was well received, but I did get comments about how it could have ended with more ambivalence. And that's a hard one, because we're kind of, we grow up in the United States of America under the, what do you call it, the onus of Hollywood, and you tend to want to shape your plays so that they have an upbeat ending. And to not have an upbeat ending, to have an ambivalent ending, is you kind of have to go against the tide.
Well, see,
to do
I like, this play, Cat's Pajamas, has a happy ending. It's the only one I have that, but I like what I call positive endings. They're not ambivalent, but at least one character is a better person at the end of the play because of what happens in the play. So I like endings like that are positive but not necessarily happy-sappy and not ambivalent either. I like to know what the playwright wanted to convey.
I want to address the question there about what makes plays harder. For me, it's to write about things that are frightening to me.
Could you give us an example?
Oh, simple things like death and dying and cancer.
Which you've done well.
Thank you.
You've written some wonderful
Yes, you do.
pieces on that.
Yeah, but it's hard.
Why? Why? What is your experience when it gets
Oh.
difficult?
When I'm frightened of it, because in order to write the play, I have to inhabit each of the characters, and there's usually one that I don't like, but I have to know that character well enough to write the play.
I think also, as a former actor, acting and playwriting are neighboring muscles, I would say. Like, if you've been an actor, you kind of have some of the skills to be a playwright. You may not be a good one, but you can at least give it a shot. And getting so close to those characters is part of that. And sometimes it's really hard and really painful to get that close to some characters who may not make it. Anyway.
Karima brought in why don't you read that aloud, rather than me read it aloud? I thought it was so interesting. And this is in regards to actors and playwrights.
It's funny, somebody just sent this to me today. It's a quote that, from Jane Anderson wrote a
You
book.
want to stand up?
Yeah. It's from a book called What Playwrights Talk About. They sent it to me this morning and I was like, okay, I guess that's something I'm supposed to pay attention to. And they marked out a quote, if I can keep it up on my screen. As a playwright, I've just seen the last 6 months to a year creating this thing, making all my mistakes in private, on paper. I'm now at my 5th to 6th to 8th drafts, so I have gone through my entire creative process. I've solved everything. I know exactly how it should sound, right? I know exactly what every beat, ... And as a young playwright, of course, I was appalled that no one got it. And as an arrogant, ignorant young playwright, I had forgotten what I had to go through as an actor to find the script and rehearse. There's a reason it takes a month or so for a company to rehearse. It's not just about memorizing and blocking. I finally realized in the first week of rehearsal, I know more about the play than anyone else in the room. But by the 3rd week of rehearsal, they know more about the play than I do.
And that, believe it or not, is extremely satisfying. It's kind of like you've handed your child to a gifted teacher or something, and they see all of this. They have a vision which is entirely, maybe very different than yours, which complements yours, but is just so different. I'm so sorry that our director didn't come tonight, because I had such respect for his process, and it was something I never could have done, but what he brought out of the actors was just extraordinary. And that is another one of the real great satisfactions of being a playwright is having directors and actors take your work and enhance it in so many ways.
Rosemary, I have a question for you guys about this. As an actor, do you ever feel like if the person isn't what you've heard in your head, how hard is it for you to come over to what they're doing, or do you feel like you need to fix it, or does it sort of settle in eventually to what you were seeing?
Well, I had that experience with a play, and actually Talia was directing it, and we knew that this actor was really not up, well, we realized that this actor was really not up to that particular performance that he needed to give. But on the other hand, after a while, we saw that what he was giving was significant or substantial or valuable, or it was good. It was good enough, you know. I mean, it was not just good enough. It was I don't know how to describe it further. Maybe someone has had something similar experience. It was a satisfaction with that, with what was being done, even though it was a lead character and he wasn't a great actor. We could be okay with it. Go ahead.
Well, I have so many questions, but I guess one question is, do you have the feeling when you write a play that you're like giving birth, and then how do you, I mean, I don't know if you want to go into like how does a playwright get their stuff published, but another question, I mean, how does it get produced? And the other question is, do any of you want to be the director as well? You know, does the playwright always let it go to other people?
I mean, I've directed some of my own stuff, but
what is it?
I've directed my own stuff before.
And
Yeah, I don't love it. Yeah.
And then I guess my real question is, when you write a play, how do you, like, I'm in the middle of a few plays, and I feel like I'm so alone in it. Like, I need something. I need people to listen to it or read it, or do you have other people reading it? I mean, how do you get to the next part out of your own
I can answer that, yeah. I'm different from a lot of people, a lot of playwrights, because I have to know the beginning, middle, and end before I can get started. And that is fun, to think about what I'm doing, you know, it's like, that's how you can write your play in your head, and you don't have to put a word on paper. It's not so hard then, it's really fun. And then the first draft is really hard for me, it's like really hard. And then once the first draft is done, then, yeah, people read it, and they give me comments. This play, Cat's Pajamas, has had several readings, and literally dozens of people have given me comments on it.
And when you do say that, do you have just friends read it, or is there
No,
some?
You
playwrights
can do
or
both.
actors, yeah, I mean,
you can do it
however
however.
you
You can
want.
have just a table read where you invite people in and give them some tea and cookies, and they read your play out loud.
There's also a few groups on like Facebook
Yeah.
that are really great, and they just do Zoom readings, and they one of them's called States of Play. You've had something on that, right? And they do it. They do basically a couple of these a month, and you can just submit your thing to them, and then the lady that runs it casts it. And they do a feedback session afterwards, and it's really good. States of Play. And then Play Zoomers, you mentioned, is another good resource.
Oh, it's hard to get produced
Well,
in Play Zoomers.
Right.
It's very hard to get produced in Play Zoomers.
Oh.
It's hard to get a play
Very hard to get produced what?
in Play Zoomers.
Oh, and play Zoomers.
But play Zoomers, I mean, yeah, they get hundreds of submissions
Right.
for only a few spots.
But you're talking about table readings.
Yeah.
It's, you just join groups. I write 10-minute plays just for my own satisfaction mainly. And I'm still in a New Hampshire writers group, and they're all prose people. And they give me great comments for my 10-minute plays because they understand characters and story, and they don't even see plays at all. And they're not shy about telling me what to do. So I like that too. So you just have to put yourself out there and join a lot of groups and meet a lot of other writers, and the resources are out there, but you do have to just look for them. But you cannot really develop a play in a vacuum. You have to have other people. Nobody can do that.
I wanted to offer a sort of a different side of that. For me to hear my play early on, I like to have really good audience for it. So I get actors to read it at senior centers. They are the best audience for critiques, right? Seniors know everything. They've seen real plays. I mean, they know what theater is, and they are absolutely the best critics that I've run into.
So Robert, how do you go about getting that?
I call up the senior center director and say, I'd like to put a play up in a couple of weeks. I've got an actor, and they put it in
A
the
reading,
bulletin.
a reading.
A reading, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, we get 20 to 50 seniors show up, and we do a talk back afterwards to find out what's working, what's not. And they just have a grand time. I mean, it's like a party there.
Does one actor read it or a lot of different actors?
Well, for each show, I typically have 2 character plays. So it's the 2 character, I've had 3 character plays. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of looking for a place to hear your play read with an audience,
Yeah.
Senior centers and senior venues, in my opinion, are top-notch.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And it's free to the playwright.
This is important.
Yeah.
And also seniors, and I say they,
Right.
also don't give a shit. They have nothing to lose
Right.
to give you a critique. You know, they'll tell you the truth.
They are completely honest.
And I say they. yeah.
Completely honest, yes.
Well, you do plays for children, so it seems like you would
I should
easily,
just go to a school.
yeah, exactly.
and just
Or a
say-
library. And say, I mean, libraries are looking for
Yes.
material like that. They would be really happy. And children also,
I think they're a great audience too, or because they won't mince words. They'll be like, I didn't get it, you know? Like,
totally, totally. Yes, Joyce.
What is there about the format of playwriting that appeals to you as opposed to another format, like a short story or novel or?
You mean a genre, a different
Yeah.
genre?
Yes,
yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Good.
In my experience, playwriting is the most difficult writing because I don't get a chance to describe anything. It's just what the characters say. And for some odd reason of nature, I am always attracted to the most difficult way to do something.
Comes with being a physicist.
As a physicist, were you verbal or nonverbal?
Both. Right, ambidextrous.
Well, I actually am just the opposite. I mean, I love dialogue, and I'm very weak at description. So that's why playwriting is appealing to me.
And I'm different too because I call myself a lazy person. It's not that I'm lazy, it's just I don't like to sit down and write all these things out. I'm more of a rewriter and a craftsman rather than an artist, so I'm not like a natural writer. So it's easier to write plays for me because you're limited in what you can say. And I'm trying to turn one of my plays into a novel right now, and I'm finding it very difficult because you can do anything. And I don't want to do anything. I don't want to describe the characters. I want the director to choose actors for the novel. And that's what they So there's a lot of stuff I don't want to write in this novel, but I am doing it. But I just find playwriting easier for my psychological quirks.
what? I don't know. Because I've written short stories and poetry and, other things. but I always come back to plays because of the immediacy of it. And there's so many different ways you can write a play. So, you know, like
Right.
Vicki and I write very different things, you know,
Yeah,
and
I
they don't
guess, I don't know.
look the same on the page probably even, you know. And so I think I like the versatility, and I can tell my story in we were talking about kind of brevity, right? So I write a lot of plays because I came from the UK. A lot of their plays are an hour-ish, one shot, boom. So like learning to write that was exciting for me, to tell a story in maybe one location in real time. Like, what does that look like?
So, when you say that they're doing 1 hour plays, so they're not calling them one acts, they're
No,
calling them,
those are like, to a lot of people in the UK, 1 hour play is a full length.
really?
And it's
Some-
because the Fringe is such a big thing, and that's
Yeah.
basically what the Fringe is 1 hour stuff.
Yeah,
Are playwrights like painters? You have drawers full of plays you've written, number one. And number two, do you go back to those that you wrote 20 years ago, and all of a sudden thematically they matter? Does that happen?
Well, I like to rewrite, so I'm just constantly rewriting everything. I mean, I can just open up a play just to change one word. So I read a few years ago that Tennessee Williams
yeah.
was rewriting his plays up to the very end, and I thought, wow, why did he do that?
Yeah, he was working on, supposedly he was working on Streetcar Named
Well,
Desire when he died.
But
Yeah.
now I know, it's like
Yeah.
this play Cat's Pajamas. If anybody sent me an email and said, Vicki, I had a comment on your play, how about, and I would be I'd really want to pay attention to that because they're continually evolving. I think that's why I like, when you write a book, the book is done and you have a revision, but that's it. Whereas a play it can always change it and make it better. And you never can have the ultimate thing you want, you can always make it better. So I find that very pleasurable to do that.
And yes, I do have a file cabinet full of plays that I've written. So yes, kind of like a painter, I suppose. The other thing I'll say is like I'm always kind of writing. You know, I think just being in the world as a playwright, you're always kind of listening to what people say and how they say it. And I was a bartender for years, so that was really great. I was talking with some people I had just met, and I left, and the one friend in the group called me up later, and she's like, "Oh, they said you were really easy to talk to, but I told them you were just collecting data." True story.
Yeah, we might just, we don't have very much time, but we might just, where do your ideas come from for your plays? Do you start out with, like a big idea like global warming, or do you start out with a character, or do you start out with just something someone said at a bar when they were like really out of it?
My plays start from anything. Like,
Yeah.
I wrote a play about a re-education camp, and that was the idea. That was it. I wanted to write a play about a woman in re-education camp. I didn't have character, plot, anything, and I just kind of mulled it over, and finally I got going on it.
What's a
And,
re-education camp?
A re-education camp after a totalitarian government takes over a country,
Ooh.
and she's not compliant. So anyway, it's so that's or just like this play Cat's Pajamas. I just was riding in a car in Los Angeles, and I thought I could write a play about a person who does something involving a car. So that was just the genesis of that. So that's the fun of it. You start with nothing and you make something.
Lately, I've started with location, like where is the play happening,
Yeah.
and why are they? Usually, my people are stuck somewhere, and why are they stuck in this place? You know?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I start with a conflict.
Could you give an example?
Well, like in COVID, in March of 2020, neighbors who don't like each other but realize they have to become social somehow in order to get through the pandemic. So there's got to be a big sparks flying there to make it work. So the conflict is automatic by virtue of the circumstance.
Carl Hyson just had his latest book banned in the school district in Florida, probably no surprise. And he said it was because it was about a young boy in COVID, and they felt that children would be disturbed about a play with COVID. Having,
Huh.
They went through
don't
it.
get your feelings hurt.
Gee.
I almost always start with a character, basically. Or with a story that I read, and the story itself. I've written 2 plays that were, well, 3 plays really, that were stories that I either read or someone told me, and I just dramatized it.
How useful is it to submit your plays to one of the festivals?
How do you do it?
How useful is it?
Well, in terms of readings, if you're a finalist I've been a finalist at various festivals, and you get a reading as a result of that, which is very satisfying. I had a reading once in London as a result of having a play that was accepted by the North American Actors Association. So, but other than that, I can't think of anything particularly great. I don't submit to festivals hardly anymore. What about anyone
I
else?
just find full-length plays, it's just hard to get them
Yeah.
produced. I mean, I'm grateful that Teatro Caracas is doing this one. It's easier to get 10-minute plays done at
There's so
festivals.
many more
I mean,
opportunities.
yeah, there's so many more 10-minute play festivals, and they're easier to write. I mean, nobody would say that they're as hard as a full-length play.
Well, the real bugaboo about full-length plays is that once you get it produced, like this play was, it doesn't matter where it was produced in this little theater here in Santa Fe. Theaters in Oklahoma or North Carolina or Georgia, they won't touch it.
Because
You
they
know,
all want the world premiere.
They all want a full-length play that's never been produced anywhere.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, well, unless you're Tennessee Williams, or unless you're, who's a contemporary writer's getting published all the time, Laura, what's her name, Gunderson or something?
Yeah.
like that?
Lauren Gunderson, Sarah Rule, yeah.
Yeah.
I find that theaters
All
don't want
of
to,
them.
they don't want to do new plays. They just want to do what the crowd pleasers and what the audiences will expect to see. And even if the audience doesn't like the play they do, they'll think they should like it.
Because yeah, right.
So that's what I have to do.
It's so true. It's very painful. It's
Yeah.
really, really painful. I used to say that I eat rejection morning, noon, and night. It's not, it seems funny, but not
But I
all that
still
funny.
write plays because I want to, for all the obvious
Why
reasons.
do we keep writing them? We'll
Because
come back to that.
I want,
Play about
I can
that.
imagine my plays,
Mhm.
maybe nobody else can.
Well, I guess I'll say, we appreciate you. We appreciate your talent. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you to each one of you, and thank you for the wonderful questions. Isn't it fun to actually get to sit down and talk with the people that give birth to the theaters that we then go and pay to see?
It is.
And so,
I felt like I learned so much, and I was taking notes from some of the other comments that were made. It was really, really a pleasure.
so thank you all, and remember, come February 13th, all of us will get a chance to read some new plays, to give feedback on a new play. It'll be our little gift, our Valentine's gift to the creative geniuses of our community. Deb, you have something you want to add?
I want to ask, how will the playwrights who want to submit their plays to us for reading do that?
Oh, that's a good question, and for all, if you go, you can contact us through our website. You know, we have a page on Theater Santa Fe, and if you just write to Theater Lovers Club, say, I have a play, I'd like to submit a scene for the February event. We will be sending out information saying, we'll probably, we just planned this. And so it's a brand new idea, hot off the stove. And we'll have to be setting a deadline, if you want to submit something, submit it by this date, and a group of people will select what, there's only so many we'll have time for. But the event will be happening, and you're the very first to know about it. And so, thank you so much.
Bravo.